Welcome to part 2 of the SNA training series. In this short video, we will discuss what network analysis is and why it can be useful. Network analysis is a way to examine the relationships between actors. The focus is on relationships rather than actors. This is why it is referred to as social network analysis, because it is the analysis of social relationships. SNA is really about the relationships between individuals, but the same techniques can be used to examine the relationships between anything. In this training series, I will often only refer to it as SNA as network analysis because the actors we are most interested in when it comes to community groups addressing complex problems will likely be organizations, but can also be individuals. Just as network analysis could be used to understand your friend network, we can use network analysis to understand the relationships between organizations and systems, which brings us to our next key question. Network analysis is a system tool because it produces a visual of the system. This visual is not a perfect visual and is only a snapshot, but it provides a common image around which a group can frame their discussion of how they can improve that system, which takes us to our last key question. How can this common imagery be valuable? A network analysis is not always valuable, but if it is employed thoughtfully and in recognition of what it does and does not provide, then it can offer a great deal of value. Network analysis does not necessarily provide answers, but rather produces information that can be informative for understanding a system and identifying ways to improve it. Even the steps of the SNA process can be beneficial for community groups, which is what this series will be about, walking through the steps of the process through activities that hopefully will be helpful to your group in addressing that, in working to address the complex problem you have identified. But overall, network analysis can be valuable for multiple purposes, specifically in informing what the strengths and weaknesses of a system are, disrupting the system, or evaluating efforts. In this video, I will provide some examples of the ways in which network analysis can be valuable. Included here are 2 network analysis images. One quick clarification: throughout this training series, you will see many images like the ones presented here. I will likely refer to these images as network plots, maps, diagrams, or pictures. I use all of these terms interchangeably. The important point is that what the visual offers is how the shapes are connected or not connected to one another. Another quick clarification I'd like to make is that throughout this series you will hear me refer to relationships, but I will also use the term ties. I use ties interchangeably with relationships to indicate the connections between the actors or the lines connecting the shapes. The images below represent the relationships between organizations working to address food access in a region. Different colors and shapes represent characteristics of the organizations, like type of organization, a feeding program, community garden, funder, so on, as well as location of the agency. For use by a group, these shapes would also be identifiable, labeled by their name, but the names have been masked for inclusion in these videos. What is most important for our purposes here is seeing how the connections between these organizations vary depending on activity. On the left, the lines represent sharing of information. So who is connected to whom because they share information with one another. You can see that there are a number of information sharing relationships among the organizations and that there are 2 diamonds, a yellow one and a green one, that are acting as bridges in connecting many of the organizations. On the right, we have the same network, organizations addressing food access in a region, but rather than information sharing, the lines represent food sharing. You can see that the network is very different now because the flow of food distribution is very different from the flow of information. Fewer organizations share food with one another in comparison to information, which is to be expected. But what is interesting is to see how different the overall shape of the 2 networks are. And in the food sharing network, only the large yellow diamond acts as a bridge. The green diamond bridge central to the image on the left is not involved in food distribution. Therefore, the green diamond only connects organizations to the information flow and not to the food distribution that is happening among some of the organizations in the system. As I mentioned before, network analysis is not always valuable. The image to the right is one such example. This colorful hairball is not really useful in that it alone does not tell us much about the system. Thus, it is important to remember that network analysis is only a tool, not a solution. It is important to understand the tool and how to use it well, which is the purpose of this training series. And in addition, even if what is ultimately produced looks like this image to the right, the activities that are included in this series are designed to help community groups uncover important insights about their system so as to better inform their efforts to work together to tackle complex problems. I have found that the best uses of network analysis for community groups is to identify the strengths of the system, identify the weaknesses of a system, disrupt the system, and evaluate efforts. The first way network analysis can be useful is in identifying the strengths of the system. I always like to start with the positives. What is good about the current system? What valuable relationships exist among the actors in the system? The network plot depicted here is the referral relationships between different organizations engaged in supporting families. The colors represent the different service areas involved in providing family support. We can see that there are some service areas where the organizations are connecting with each other, such as this cluster of blue shapes. But there are also some valuable relationships that connect across service areas, such as the mix of colors connected within this other circle. In the example like this one, learning about the relationships that already exist can be valuable for learning about relationships that can be leveraged, or even being sure that any new efforts don't undermine these efforts, like shifting funding in ways that disintegrate these established ties. In addition to identifying the strengths, the network analysis can be used to identify weaknesses or vulnerabilities in the system. For instance, the image here is the one presented earlier, the food distribution network. Most of the food distribution is reliant on the yellow diamond, or Z. Such a reliance can cause inefficiencies like bottlenecks or vulnerabilities because what were to happen to food distribution if org-Z was not able to continue to do its part. This additional image depicts what the network looks like without org-Z. In this particular example, many other feeding programs were frustrated by the restrictions and expectations of org-Z, but as this network plot depicts, there were no real alternatives to being included in food distribution other than through org-Z. Another way that network analysis can be valuable to community groups is by disrupting the system. The network plot here captures the information sharing among organizations involved in early child development. Though there are a number of information sharing ties between the organizations, there are a lot of organizations not connected to that information flow. These are the organizations listed at the top left of the image. And also there are a number of missing ties and also holes. In addition, many of the organizations are reliant on the large red and yellow diamonds, org V1 and org U1. In presenting this visual to the group became motivated to work together to improve the sharing of information among the providers. As one individual said, "We thought we were sharing information with one another, but then we saw the network plots and realized we were not." The case presented on the previous slide is also an example of the value of using network analysis to evaluate collective efforts. As discussed, the network analysis plots helped disrupt the early education system. The community group realized they needed to change the way they were engaging with each other so they could improve the system. This particular group did, and after years of working to improve the information sharing among the providers in the system, a repeat of the network analysis 4 years after the initial one confirmed the positive results of their efforts. The image on the right is the same information sharing network, but this plot depicts a much stronger information sharing network, more ties, and more organizations engaged. This change was brought about through networking events where providers learned about the resources available to their clients in the area. The quote at the top is from one participant in this effort that became more involved in early child development because of these events. I learned about other things that were going on in the community that I didn't have any idea about. So those are really great resources. It's great to have and know where health clients can go to get those resources. This is why understanding where there are relationships and not relationships in the system is important. Like in this instance, sharing information results in being able to help clients access the help they need. The resources are there, but it takes knowing about them for the system to function well. The examples on the previous slides are from projects in which I've worked with community groups to do a network analysis. Doing a full network analysis takes collecting data, analyzing that data, and having guidance on how to interpret the results. Oftentimes, community groups will not have the capabilities or expertise to do a full network analysis. However, going through the steps and sketching out a rough visual of the system can be valuable on its own. So in this training package, we will simulate the steps of a network analysis. With each activity, the idea is that your group will uncover insights about the system through group discussions that can inform how you work collectively together to address the complex problem you have identified. But before we take that first step, we need to do some pre-work, making sure there is a common purpose that brought you together as a community group, and how you as a collective group will work together to meet that purpose. In the next video of the series, we will discuss identifying strategies for your network.